Hello, it's Stephen White, Steve Arts 89. Orville, second last episode of season 2. I didn't do any research, as I often don't do with Orville. I usually just watch it. I'm usually too busy recovering from Star Trek Discovery, and I just go straight into Orville. So I don't even know if it was a two-parter, but when I was looking at it, it just started, and I thought, I wonder what they're going to do. This is the second last episode. Are they going to set up something? Is it going to be a two-parter? Is it going to be interesting? And then it was a romantic episode. And I'm like, oh God, no, not another one. The one with Gordon put me to sleep. And I find it really weird that Orville started off being comedy sci-fi, and then it pulled back on the comedy and it seemed to replace it with romance. And as much as I like the fact that they spend a lot of time with the characters, you get to know them, you care about them, you are engaged. So they are well written and all that. But I want more science fiction based episodes, more, I don't know, I just was watching it like, oh God, really? Okay, yes, at least they're dealing with the main relationship in the show between Ed and Kelly. Basically, they stumble through a temporal anomaly and or a gravitational wave that enhances an experiment that Isaac was doing into time travel. So Kelly, who just happened to be with him at the time and near the experiment, is affected, and they actually pull her out of the past from 7 years ago. So there's just Kelly 7 years before, just walking around on the ship. So they then inevitably deal with all the relationship issues because Ed still wants to get back with her. She doesn't think it's appropriate, and she's moved on, and she doesn't want the issues of dating, two people in command dating and all that. So she's saying no, but I think we all know that there's something there, and if it weren't for that situation, they'd be together, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of interesting, but it's like a B, C, D story for me. Um, and so they have to explore all of that, and it was kind of okay because it was interesting because what would you do with a younger version of yourself? How would you react to that? And if you were a younger version of yourself, knowing where you're going to end up, how would all that affect how? So it was interesting on that level. And they start to date, of course, and he realizes that, of course, she's 7 years, she's a younger version, she's more immature. All the things they grew out of, they're going to have to deal with. So she creates in the holodeck a nightclub, and he goes, and of course he's like the old man, what, you know. And they have some really bad comedy with Borders and that dancing ridiculously, and it's just, yeah, it's the Orville. That's one of the things they do. So I having a bit of a conflict between Discovery and Orville because I hated Discovery and I loved the Orville first season, but season two, I'm liking Discovery a little bit more, not hating it. And Orville, I'm finding the comedy grinding. I want them to be more sophisticated and more realistic and more dramatic and more sci-fi when they're going less comedy but a bit more romantic comedy. So I look at it, the sets I really loved because they were so bright now are looking kind of fake. I don't know. I kind of find Discovery and Orville are opposite sides now, and I don't get what I want from either. So I'm just not happy with either of them. But so we go through all the they go through themselves. All they're talking about what should we do, what shouldn't we do, blah blah blah. Because I don't think they can send her back, and they can't stick her in a room alone like they did with in Star Trek with the pilot that they pulled off the ship from the past, the airplane jet fighter from the past. So they let her basically live her own life. Like you can basically go off and be like your own new version of Kelly. So they go through all of that, and it's about as interesting as me talking about it. And then, of course, they have a little scene where Isaac's race, I've forgotten their name, sends a couple of ships out after them. And she comes up with a way to hide, which she just got from looking at some ice in an empty drink and just obviously they were showing that she had some value, that her past, her youth, is still valuable. She's still valuable. So she saves the day. They hide. They basically get close. They fly into a ring of ice around a planet. They get up close to a giant asteroid or piece of ice, and they spray water all over themselves, which turns into ice, and then they switch everything off. And apparently, the little ships just go by, not realizing that there's a ship within the ice. So they escape, and Ed decides that he can't do it. He can't basically hook up with a younger version of her, which it is creepy when they start the scene out when they're going to sleep together, but then they don't. It is creepy, and he says, "You don't think this is creepy?" And it is creepy. It's like if you had a younger sister of someone and you just started hooking up with the younger sister, while you're still friends with there's whole different levels of ick. And eventually they realise, oh, we can send her back. They of course show up at the end and say, oh, we've worked out a way to recreate the exact circumstances of that accident, blah, blah, blah. So they decide they'll send her back, and they'll do a mind wipe. So she won't have any memory, so she'll be able to just go back and live her life like before. And it takes a lot of energy, so there's some question of can they do it, and then the last second, when Ed's just cancelling it because it's taking up too much power, it's not working, she goes back to the past. She wakes up because she was pulled out from the day after they had their first date. And she wakes up and she does feel something is different or wrong. She just feels a bit uneasy. And when he calls, and as charming and vulnerable as his call is, she says, sorry, I don't think, I just don't see us working out. And hangs up. And that's it. So the huge implications of what changing that relationship, changing his place in the world, his place in the Union, how he's affected all the races and events that have happened in season 1 and season 2 could all be changed by her not dating him, because she got him in the captain chair after they. So I so owe the Orville an apology for underestimating how clever and epic this tiny little annoying love story episode, romantic comedy episode, could be. Because now what's going to happen in the next episode? Are we just going to go to the altered future and see the shitstorm that's happening there? Or are they going to pull back from that and she end up just dating him the next week or something? Are they going to, did they give us an amazing ending of this episode just to undermine it next week, or is it going to now be played out? I still now realise I didn't even check to see if it was one in part 2. But I guess this is my honest review because I don't have a clue. But either way, there's going to be something happening next episode that this is going to have to lead into. There has to be something come out of this. It can't just be a one-off. Because it could always just be her in another reality, because time could have shattered, time could have split. They could have created another alternate reality where she doesn't date him, and there's another universe out there where they're not together. And the universe that they're in didn't change, because you don't want to get into temporal mechanics and thinking about the logic of time travel, because they didn't want to deal with it in the episode when they're trying to talk to her and explain to her. But if all this went wrong, how would the second she came through, all that should have changed? But did it not change until she was sent back, and then it changed in the past? So you can't, there's no way to work it out, which gives them a lot of leeway, because they can just write anything and there's really no wrong way to deal with time travel. But at the same time, there are a lot of very unsatisfactory ways of dealing with time travel. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next episode, but I really thought it was a clever little twist that they just threw on at the end, which you didn't really see coming. You assumed she was just going to go home and live happily ever after, and no. So interesting, clever, fun episode, but for the most part, I'm finding the Orville to be a bit next-gen rerun I've seen before, and they're going to have to work pretty hard to get the surprises in and make it worth sticking with for further seasons, I think. They can't just be the anti-Discovery, especially if Discovery isn't Discovery anymore, and is less dark and nihilistic and more like the Star Trek we knew, which maybe if we're lucky and we get a Captain Pike series, or I don't know what's happening with that, but that's not what this video is about. But okay, so I'm surprised. I'm looking forward to the next episode. So I'm just going to leave it there. And please, if you have anything interesting that you know about what's happening, or anything you want to say. I can't fucking concentrate because my next door neighbour is making noise, and I'm like, is that going to show up on the video? Is that unprofessional? And then I realise my videos look really, really amateur anyway, so I'm just going to finish and not care. Yeah, so please feel free to subscribe and leave any comments, because it all helps. And I really am interested in what other people think about the show, and when I watch something, I want to know what other people are thinking. That's why I watch all the reviews. Not because I want to know what happens in the show, I just want to know what people think of it. So I hope that I'm one of the thoughts out there. So, okay, thanks, bye.